Hello and welcome to Dove Biology APES Lessons to Go. This is Unit 2, Energy and Energy Flow. Our textbooks define energy as the ability to do work and to transfer heat. Examples of energy can range anywhere from light all the way to electrical energy. Now, energy has different capacities to be able to do useful work. This difference in the amount of useful work that energy can do is referred to as its quality. High quality energy is highly organized and is able to do a lot of useful work. For example, electricity, coal and gas, or concentrated sunlight is highly organized and can accomplish a lot of useful work. Whereas low quality energy is disorganized or dispersed and has little ability to do useful work. For example, the heat of the ocean. Now, just because the heat of the ocean may be of low quality, it doesn't mean that there's not a lot of it. In fact, if we could concentrate all of the energy from the oceans, we'd find that it has more potential energy than all of the fossil fuels that are available on planet Earth. But unfortunately, because it is dispersed, it has very little ability in its current form to do useful work. Now, all of our energy is governed by two basic laws. We call them the laws of thermodynamics. The first law of thermodynamics says we cannot create or destroy energy, but we can change that energy from one form to another. So let's take a look at coal as an example. Coal is an excellent example of stored potential chemical energy. That coal is going to be burned. And when you burn that coal, it's going to convert that stored energy into the energy of heat. That heat energy then is going to then be used to create kinetic energy in water molecules as it's turned to steam, which then turns as turbine and converts that energy into electricity, which then can come to our homes. So we didn't create that energy, but we did convert it from the stored potential energy in the coal all the way into the electrical energy that then is transferred to our homes. Now, the second law of thermodynamics says that energy quality is always going to decrease. As energy changes from one place to another, then there's always going to be a degradation to a more dispersed form. For example, as the sun's energy is converted into carbohydrates through the process of photosynthesis, and then as we consume those sugars and transfer that energy into the bonds of ATP, and then as we use that stored potential energy that's from ATP so that we can move and think and live, every conversion results in heat, which is a more dispersed form, a degraded form of that original energy. Now, all ecosystems survive on a combination of two things: energy flow and matter cycling. Our ecosystem always receives a new batch of high-quality solar energy. That energy is captured by our producers and then is transferred to consumers and decomposers. With each energy conversion, we are losing some of that energy in the form of heat, which then radiates back into the atmosphere and perhaps back out into space. Unfortunately, we don't get a new supply of matter. All the matter that we'll ever have is present here on planet Earth. Those chemicals are then actually cycled through our ecosystem. They spend some time in the plants, they spend some time in the consumers, they're released back into the environment by the decomposers. That matter may change form, but it's all that we have here on planet Earth. Now, as energy flows through our ecosystem, it's going to flow through different levels based upon how that energy is received and transferred. At the base, we have our producers. The producers are capturing the energy. The first ones to be able then to take that energy into themselves are going to be our primary consumers. The second ones that are gaining access to that stored energy from the plants are going to be our secondary consumers. And then the third group that's going to take that original energy into their tissues is going to be our tertiary consumers. So at the base of our trophic levels are our producers. Terrestrial producers are responsible for photosynthesis. They take sunlight to be able to produce carbohydrates by using carbon dioxide and water as raw materials and solar energy as their energy source. They're able to store that energy into the bonds of glucose and, of course, produce oxygen as a byproduct. Producers found on the seafloor do another kind of production called chemosynthesis, where they take chemicals that are coming from inside the earth, like hydrogen sulfide, and convert that into carbohydrates to support those particular ecosystems, like those found in the hydrothermal vents on the ocean floor. Now, the rate at which an ecosystem's producers convert the energy into chemical energy as biomass is called gross primary productivity. It's kind of like when you're receiving a paycheck from your job. All of the money that you earn is going to be your gross earnings. So gross primary productivity is all of the production that's happening by that particular ecosystem's producers. Gross primary productivity is measured in one of two ways. It's either measured as kilocalories per meter squared per year, how much energy is being stored as a result of photosynthesis, or how many grams or kilograms of biomass, living material, is being produced per meter squared per year. Now, not all of the production is going to be able to be passed on to our consumers. The producers themselves need a small amount of that energy in order to provide for their own metabolism. So if we take the gross primary productivity and subtract that amount of energy which is necessary for the plant survival, what we have left over is called our net primary productivity. Once again, if we think of our paycheck as an example, after Uncle Sam takes their cut, what we actually take home is going to be our net pay. So net primary productivity is the energy that's left over for the consumers after the producers take their cut. Now, if we examine productivity in both terrestrial and aquatic ecosystems, we're going to notice some very interesting things. In our terrestrial ecosystems, in our top three, it makes sense that we have tropical rainforest and temperate forest. Because forest, the predominant organism is going to be trees. And so there's going to be a lot of production that will happen there. But one of our top producers on land is actually swamps and marshes. A lot of people think that swamps and marshes are not very valuable pieces of land. They're kind of smelly, wet places that should just be filled in for a new shopping mall. But these are essential ecosystems in that they're able to provide a lot of productivity, which means they support a lot of consumers and a lot of biodiversity. If we move to our aquatic ecosystems, we see that our top producer is going to be our estuaries, like the Chesapeake Bay. So it's no matter that we want to try to preserve a place like the Chesapeake Bay for its ability to provide a natural service like primary production. It also makes sense that at the bottom of our list are things like deserts. When you have a lack of plants, you're going to have a lack of primary productivity. Likewise, the open ocean. Well, as a whole, there's a lot of production happening in the ocean, but per meter squared, there's not a lot of productivity in the open ocean. Now, from our producers, the energy is transferred to our consumers. Our consumers, also known as heterotrophs, will get their food by then breaking down all or parts of other organisms or their remains. Now, typically, this is done through aerobic respiration, which is basically the opposite of photosynthesis. Glucose, which contains that stored energy from the sun, is going to be broken. When glucose is broken, it produces carbon dioxide and water. When you break those bonds, it releases energy. That energy can be then transferred into the bonds of ATP so that our cells can do work. Now, some organisms are actually able to release that energy from the glucose or other organic compounds without the presence of oxygen. You may recall that this is known as anaerobic respiration, happening without air. Another term for this is fermentation. Now, depending upon the chemical reaction that's at play, we're going to get some various end products. When we have, say for instance, decomposition in a bog, maybe we're going to have some hydrogen sulfide or some methane. If we allow for, say for instance, yeast to ferment sugars without oxygen, we might produce alcohol. Now, all energy flow in ecosystems can be diagrammed using food chains and food webs. These diagrams are going to show the flow of energy and the transfer of matter from one trophic level to another. It's important to note that the arrows show the direction of the flow of energy. Now, if we change one piece of that food chain or food web, it's going to trigger changes in other trophic levels. This is called a trophic cascade. For example, if we take a look at the relationship between a predator and a prey, like a snowshoe hare and the lynx, as the hare population increases, so does the lynx population. The predator is going to always follow the prey in terms of these population interactions. If we eliminate the hare, then the lynx population is going to be eliminated as well. A change in one trophic level is going to affect another. As energy flows through food chains and food webs, we're going to see a decrease in the amount of available energy as we move from one trophic level to another. This is in accordance with the second law of thermodynamics. As we move from, say, producers to the various levels of consumers, we're going to see a reduction in the amount of available energy to the next level. Only about 10% of the useful energy is actually being transferred to the next trophic level. The remainder is lost as heat and waste. Now, the waste energy some of it can be reclaimed by the decomposers, but that energy is not actually being available to the next trophic level. So when we consider the efficiency of energy transfer from one trophic level to another, a vegetarian diet might actually seem to be more energy efficient, because when we eat cereals and grains or vegetables or fruit, we've only had the energy pass through one step. And so there's been only one set of energy losses. Whereas if we were to eat cows or other animals, the energy would have passed through two steps. And remember, with each energy transfer, there's going to be a decrease by about 90% of the amount of available energy for the next level. So understanding the flow of energy in ecosystems has a lot of repercussions. Not only do we understand why we must preserve ecosystems that have high productivity, but also we can understand the efficiency of energy flow in ecosystems so that as we exploit environments for our own nutritional needs, we can be more efficient and therefore more sustainable.